Hello and welcome to CTV News Across Canada for Tuesday, April 8th. We've got the top local stories from coast to coast. Stories that affect you and the country. Thanks for joining us.
Insisting it's all just economic medicine, Trump urged investors not to worry, not to be weak, and not to be what he calls panicans.
I have a bad feeling about the market opening today.
His instincts were right. Markets plunged all over the world again, then seemed to rebound ever so briefly over a rumor that there would be a 90-day tariff pause,
which the White House has since denied.
The stock market is more of a symptom than the cause of the problem, but everyone's agreeing that we're heading into some very dangerous economic times.
It didn't help that Trump threatened more tariffs on China unless Beijing backed down on its own counter levies.
We're going to have one shot at this, and no other president's going to do this, what I'm doing.
Liberal leader Mark Carney figures the chance of a U.S. recession is now more of a probability. Both the Conservative and NDP leaders reiterating their strategies.
What you have to do is invest in people. And with the uncertainty in the States and how that's impacting workers in Canada, we actually need to invest in our country.
We have to acknowledge that this chaos is the direct result of wrong-headed, unnecessary, chaotic policies coming from President Trump.
We can give ourselves far more than the U.S. can take away. So the U.S. is driving itself into a recession, but what we can control is where we invest here, how we support our people, and that's what we're doing.
Meanwhile, as the impact of the tariffs are reaching further champagne and cognac makers, the latest to raise concerns, the European Union is reminding Trump of its 0 for 0 offer on trade.
Because Europe is always ready for a good deal, so we keep it on the table.
And the facts are pointing in negative direction, negative for the U.S. citizens, negative for investors in the U.S.
Even billionaires who once backed Trump are warning of what they call a self-induced nuclear winter.
It's a real challenge. We're hearing from businesses who are not sure if they can make investments in this climate.
And economists figure the trade war will have an impact on countries around the world and in every province in Canada. St. John Alexander, CTV News, Vancouver.
Lindsay Smith is keeping her daycare kids close to home after gunshots rang out in her Nepean neighborhood Sunday morning.
The area where the incident took place, we were actually Friday morning, we're playing right next to that area. And then by yesterday afternoon, the area where we were playing, like around the trees, was even taped off.
20-year-old Mahad Elmi was killed and another 21-year-old man seriously injured. It's the latest homicide marking a spike in violence across the city.
We were playing out here with the kids and we heard a few gunshots. I just set my kids inside the house.
In the past 8 days, 5 people have been killed, pushing the city's homicide count this year to 10. Police have made arrests in 8 of those cases, including 61-year-old Robert Russ, accused of killing 60-year-old Brenda Russ Saturday inside a Barhaven home, in what police are calling a femicide, the second of the year.
Ottawa is a very safe city, and it will continue to be safe despite this spike in homicides.
Police say none of the murders are connected, but the numbers point to an upward trend following a record high in 2024 with 25 people killed.
If the rate for the first 3 months of this year continues, it could go up a lot.
While police continue to work with community groups, one expert says reversing the rise in homicides will take targeted funding and leadership at all levels.
We need the leaders of the major organizations that can actually make a difference. And we need to be prepared to have a budget that reflects what we need to be doing.
Back in Nepean, residents say they're shaken but grateful to their neighbors who rushed in to help the victims.
They were trying to help him stop bleeding until emergency services came to take over. They all kind of want to jump in and help or do what they can.
And police have not made any arrests in 2 of the homicide cases, including yesterday's shooting in Nepean. Police are asking anyone with information to come forward or call Crime Stoppers. Patricia?
CTV's Caitlin Wilson live for us tonight.
These are the moments just before this Laval city bus crashed into a daycare, killing a 4-year-old boy, a 5-year-old girl, and seriously injuring several other children. A publication ban forbids us from showing the impact more than 2 years ago. But today, victims' families watched it in court for the first time.
Today, It was awful. It was very difficult.
It was very hard to watch. I was shaking a bit. The accused didn't have any response or anything. That was very hard to see.
Pierre Saint-Amand, now 53, was driving the bus. It crashed through the daycare's kitchen wall at 26 kilometers an hour, coming to a halt halfway inside. He's facing 2 counts of second-degree murder and several charges of assault causing bodily harm, as well as assault with a weapon. After the collision, witnesses say Saint-Amand stood up, turned towards them, took off all his clothes except his sweater, and started hitting himself in the face. Both the prosecution and the defense are arguing he's not criminally responsible, citing 2 psychiatric assessments. But not all parents agree.
We see that the system is not very well protected for us. It's not a fair system that happened.
My little superhero feel good today. Some parents can't say the same thing.
2 psychiatrists will be testifying as to Saint-Amand's mental state, but the judge will have the final say. The trial continues tomorrow. Maria Saru, CTV News, Laval.
Shortly before 3:30 on Sunday, first responders were called to this property on Lansdowne Street for a suspicious vehicle.
Sudbury Fire and EMS entered into a detached garage where the black pickup truck was located, and found inside was a man that was found to be deceased.
First responders discovered the man had sustained a gunshot wound.
We cannot determine cause of death as of yet. There will be a post-mortem tomorrow, which will provide us more answers and shed more light on how this individual died.
Officers cleared the house and confirmed no occupants were inside. At this time, there is no connection between the vehicle, the home, and the deceased.
So our investigators will be reaching out to the property owners and to start to shed light on the circumstances that led to this discovery.
With a church next door and a school down the street, Ornella says officers can't say at this time that there is no concern for public safety.
We believe that this, at this time, was not a random attack. The investigation so far suggests that this was not a random shooting. We continue to investigate where the shooting happened, whether it was on this property or elsewhere. So that's where we ask the public for their assistance in, the description we provided to the media, being a 2004 4-door black Dodge Ram pickup truck.
Ornella says if anyone has seen this vehicle or has security camera footage in the area, to please contact police. At this point, investigators are trying to retrace the steps of not only the victim, but also the truck. Lindsay Alick, CTV News, Sudbury.
Here's a challenge system. Guerrero smokes one the other way.
It's the biggest contract in Blue Jays history.
Wow. 14 years, $500 million.
Vladimir Guerrero Jr. posting this to his Instagram today, putting to rest any rumors of the Jays star leaving.
They might not have been able to afford it, but they probably couldn't afford not to do it either.
The 26-year-old is coming off one of his best years ever, winning a Silver Slugger award with 30 home runs and a .322 batting average last year.
Vladdy got the number that he wanted, and the reality is he probably could have gotten that and more if he had gone to free agency.
Blue Jays fans had been worried when the two sides failed to reach a deal prior to spring training. Guerrero had told the team he intended to test out free agency after the season. This deal could make him a Blue Jay for life.
If he stays there to the end of the deal to 2039, I mean, the Gardner might be done by then.
There had been pressure on the Blue Jays front office after losing out on signing Shohei Ohtani and Juan Soto the last 2 off seasons. This deal is the 3rd largest in Major League Baseball.
Crazy amount for nowadays, especially with everything that's going on. I think good talent should be rewarded. Now, that's a lot of money for sure.
I think the $500 million could be better used elsewhere.
I should have played harder when I was younger. That's what I think.
Now the question becomes the team's other pending free agent, shortstop Bo Bichette, and Steve Phillips says it may be tough to find enough money, but it is possible.
And build around these 2 young superstars for the future of the organization. So I don't think that it closes the door on Bichette just yet.
So the team's in Boston right now, so fans are going to have to wait about a week until they get back and welcome Vladimir Guerrero with his new contract. To give you some context on the money, when the Skydome, or now Rogers Centre, was built, it cost $570 million. Reporting live, I'm Sean Leathong. Nathan, I'll send it back to you.
Thank you, Sean.
It's definitely extremely brazen with just the armed individuals. It's crazy.
Mark Klippenstein woke up Sunday to messages from his uncle about a break-in at their family farm near Bagot.
They got a few tools and a few other things I guess we didn't notice.
But Klippenstein didn't know how terrifying the incident was until he saw this surveillance footage captured around 3:30 in the morning. The videos show a pickup truck arriving on the property and several people jumping out with what appear to be guns. Klippenstein says his cousin, who lives at the property, woke up to a cell phone alert and saw what was happening outside.
It didn't look real. You see 6 armed people get out of a vehicle and pointing guns all around. It's very alarming.
Klippenstein's cousin flipped on an outside light and the group took off. But he says the ordeal could have ended a lot worse.
It's very scary.
RCMP did respond about an hour later, but Klippenstein says there's only so much police can do.
There's no consequence for these people. And they know it.
He says these types of break-ins have become more common in the RM of North Norfolk over the past few years.
Around here, it's the last 3 years for sure. It has seemed like we've been hit a few times, us and other people in the RM for sure, like some multiple times too.
MLA for Agassiz says rural crime is a public safety issue that needs to be addressed.
It impacts their ability to go to sleep and feel comfortable in their space in rural Manitoba. It's becoming a bigger and growing concern.
Daniel Halmerson, CTV News in the RM of North Norfolk.
Another step forward to the full creation of the independence of the new police service.
An independent provincial police force is coming to Alberta, a move the minister says will create more timely, efficient, and cheaper policing compared to RCMP.
We're anywhere from 17 to 20% short on our authorized strength levels. I've said this before as well. We pay $16 million for services that we do not get.
A new bill creates a Crown corporation to oversee the provincial police. The minister says RCMP will continue to operate in Alberta, adding this plan gives municipalities a choice. He says of the roughly 1,200 sheriffs working in Alberta, 600 could quickly join the independent agency. The changes give the minister the power to create the force at a time and total cost unknown to Albertans.
Regarding cost sharing, look, I would just say this. I want to explore what we can do under the current model that we have. It's not meant to be burdensome.
Currently, municipalities of 5,000 to 15,000 cover anywhere from 10 to 90% of policing costs. Alberta municipalities are questioning if the new plan will cost cities more.
It's fantastic to hear that we're going to have an increased level of safety for our municipalities anywhere within the province. But obviously that's going to come at a cost, and we would definitely need to see where that cost is going to be borne.
We were actually blindsided by the announcement today.
A concern echoed by the rural municipalities of Alberta, who says the group has been vocally opposed to a provincial police force for years.
Absolutely no information on how the new agency will increase policing service levels in the rural areas, how it plans to decrease the overall policing costs.
It's going to happen whether it happens to you or you do it yourself.
Dan Jones isn't surprised the province is pushing ahead with the plan, while highlighting another change that will give the province more control over how complaints against police are investigated.
It potentially increases the legitimacy of that.
The Alberta Police Review Commission is expected to begin operating in late 2025. Shailan Skolsky, CTV News, Edmonton.
One day after U.S. President Donald Trump's auto tariffs took effect, Cambridge camper van company Roadtrek took action, temporarily cutting dozens of jobs and leaving workers in limbo.
The entire plant got a layoff notice for 1 week, and it was 80 employees.
CTV News obtained a letter issued to Roadtrek workers on Friday. In it, the company says it has been forced to reduce production output due to changes to North American trade agreements and tariffs, as well as subsequent influences to its business beyond its control. The 25% tariff targets automotive parts made outside the U.S.
The automotive industry is based on having those relationships with Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. And it's hard not to have parts from any one of those countries.
Gary Hudson is one of 80 Roadtrek employees now out of a job. In the days and weeks leading up to the layoffs, tariffs have been top of mind for many.
We've basically been, I guess, working on eggshells.
And now that employees are out of work altogether, there's more uncertainty than ever.
They don't know what's going to happen from day to day. Everyone knows that there's tariffs that were imposed, and not many employers know what the impact is going to be either, which puts our members at a very uneasy situation.
And it's not just Roadtrek.
There's been multiple different workplaces that have received layoffs notices over the course of the last week.
But Hudson says workers are worried about the weeks to come.
I wish I could give them the right answer and say, yeah, everything's going to be great. But again, I don't have those answers, and I also don't want to give anybody false hope.
As mentioned, Roadtrek expects workers to be back on the job on April 14th. CTV News reached out to the company to respond to the concerns raised by workers, but no one was available to comment today. Tony?
Okay, Alexandra, thank you. CTV's Alexandra Hollick with that report.
Alberta projects 310,000 surgeries will be completed this fiscal year in the province, up about 6,000 from last year. Yet it'll still be a while before Fran Hochhausen will have her surgery for her herniated discs. She's just hoping to get an appointment by September.
And then I go on a waiting list, and the waiting list is 3 to 4 years.
Hoping to get people like Hochhausen in sooner, the province is switching its funding model for acute care and surgeries to activity-based funding. The province will fund both public hospitals and private surgical facilities based on the number of procedures completed instead of blanket grants.
Funding will soon follow patients to drive more high-quality surgery for Albertans at lower costs.
The activity-based funding is already being used in countries like Australia and Sweden. It claims this will lower wait times, increase transparency, and attract more surgeons, ultimately incentivizing facilities to be more efficient.
Importantly, this creates a strong incentive for hospitals to provide their services in a timely way.
The new model is raising concerns. The Health Sciences Association of Alberta worries about the private sector cherry-picking the easier surgeries, and the Alberta Medical Association wonders about quality being sacrificed for quantity.
Guardrails to make sure that facilities are still doing those complicated cases.
Still, the AMA president says the new funding schedule could lead to a more efficient system, with hospital staff striving to get more procedures done.
It just depends how innovative they could be in terms of reducing costs,
which might get someone like Hochhausen in sooner for back surgery.
I'll believe it when I see it.
The funding switch will be active by 2026. Tyler Barrow, CTV News, Calgary.
It's not quite clear how many drug overdoses took place in Moncton this weekend, but the executive director of the province's only overdose prevention site is alarmed.
It's unprecedented, yeah. I mean, on a really bad day here, we would receive maybe 4 to 5 in a day. So, yeah, this is definitely unusual, very, very high.
Scott Phipps says his team heard everything from 5 to over 28 overdoses took place on Saturday. One, a confirmed fatality. But it's not known where they all occurred.
We've heard mixed reports of them, some saying they were all within Moncton, others saying that was throughout the entire province.
The Moncton Fire Department confirms they responded to 13 overdose calls between 7 a.m. on Saturday and 7 a.m. on Sunday. On average, the fire department usually responds to 10 overdose calls during a 24-hour shift. The cause of the overdoses could be a tainted supply of fentanyl, an opioid commonly used by members of the homeless population.
Our crews get talking to folks that are on the streets, and they're hearing that there's some bad drugs that are happening around the city right now.
Firefighters and ensemble staff often use naloxone to reverse the effects of opioids, but it doesn't always work when mixed with a non-opioid. One ensemble client says he's seen an increase in overdoses over the past week.
This is where we tell people that you should never use alone. You know, like every time I use, I'm never alone.
Phipps says when staff at Ensemble came to work this morning, they were all quite impacted from the heavy and emotional news from the weekend. Derek Haggett, CTV News, Moncton.
Christina Crum has resorted to making her own lawn sign after the one she had supporting Liberal candidate David Goodwin was stolen.
People that came to take these signs, they had to bring tools with them because we had these zip tied onto metal rebars. So this is not a teenager. This is someone with, a mission to remove Liberal signs.
And she wasn't the only victim in Port Burwell.
Put them in the ground about 3 and 4 in the afternoon, and by 10 o'clock they were gone, both of them. And then we started calling friends who had Liberal signs, and they were all gone, except those that had cameras.
Only 2 David Goodwin signs remain in the entire village. All campaigns are funded by local donations, and those signs are not only expensive, but take time to reorder.
It's also disrespectful to all our volunteers who go out in the cold. They go throughout this riding from east to west, north to south, putting up lawn signs, and then to find out they're stolen. Very, very disappointing.
And it's not just David Goodwin's campaign who is suffering from this. In a statement to CTV News, Andrew Lawton's team says they've had numerous instances of theft and damage. Lawton added it's volunteers who spend a great deal of time installing, replacing, and repairing signs. So it's regrettable that some people resort to vandalism and theft because of political disagreements. The thefts have been reported to OPP, who are now investigating.
We understand that people's emotions are high with the election season. Politics have made us very divided these days. So unfortunately, as much as you may be tempted to do that, you could be charged with trespassing, you could face criminal charges, theft, mischief, so it's not worth it.
And those whose signs have gone missing say their support will not be silenced.
Get the signs back, hopefully, and if not, I'm just going to cover my windows with his signs.
In Port Burwell, Brent Lale, CTV News.
Workers are facing the fallout of Trump's unjustified and reckless trade war. And let's be clear, this isn't a trade attack, it's a full-on attack.
Bea Brusk, president of the Canadian Labour Congress, or CLC, is calling Trump's 25% tariff on the Canadian auto industry a direct hit, impacting more than 500,000 Canadian jobs. Today is the first day of a 2-week shutdown at Windsor Assembly, expected to last until April 21st. And it's not just Windsor. The automaker is pausing production at its Toluca assembly plant in Mexico for all of April, as well as temporarily laying off 900 workers at plants in Michigan and Indiana.
Whatever he's trying to achieve in terms of getting more manufacturing back to the U.S., this is already impacting UAW members on the southern side of the border as well.
The CLC is calling on the government to protect and support Canadian workers.
If this government of Canada can move mountains in 2020 to save Bay Street, they sure as hell can save Main Street in 2025.
Brusk suggests reducing interest rates on credit cards and lines of credit to help workers facing layoffs so they aren't buried in debt.
We need to give families breathing room. We need to allow deferrals on mortgages, on car loans, on personal loans, on credit cards right across the board.
While Canadian unions stand in solidarity, it's not the same story with the United Auto Workers Union.
The UAW is in support of the workers in Canada.
That statement by Bill Pollock, president of UAW Local 251, headquartered in Wallaceburg, contradicts UAW President Sean Fain.
Tariffs aren't the solution to everything. Tariffs are a tool in the toolbox. But ultimately, we've got to fix the broken trade system.
Fain is voicing his support of auto tariffs imposed by the Donald Trump administration.
Sean Fain is wrong. From my viewpoint as president of the CLC, he is absolutely wrong.
We need to elect leaders at this time who will continue to fight for everyday people, not just investors, not just corporate lobbyists. We need people who understand that the workers are the heart of our country.
The CLC says it will continue to fight for good jobs in Canada and urges voters during this election period to ask important questions to candidates that will be knocking on their doors, like, what are you doing to support industry and community? Stephanie?
Definitely important questions to ask, Bob. Thank you for this.